And we're back. We're back. Welcome aboard. Today is January the 14th. It's a Thursday. The year is still 2021. And this is, as it always has been, forever will be, Crushing Iron Podcast. And this is episode 443.
443.
Is it time to do, thank you. Same to you. Is it time to do the math to see where we line up for episode 500?
No, I think we put that out to our statisticians, our crowd.
Someone will let us know. Do the math, because this is the last podcast for this week, and we don't foresee any bonus dogcast coming soon. Hopefully not. So yeah, let's see where 500 lines up. It's your first time tuning in. Hey, we appreciate you popping in and exploring what we have to offer you today. We come to you twice a week and always have for the last 4 years. Traditionally Mondays and Tuesdays, but always twice a week. We cover all things triathlon and a whole lot of life. Everything in between. We'll do swim, bike, run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll do race previews. We'll have on a guest every 138 episodes. But for the most part, Mike and I just sit back, relax as best friends, coaches, and athletes ourselves, and have an open, honest discussion.
Who's our next guest? How about let's go for Nick Saban.
Nick Saban, have Nick on.
Nick,
how do you feel about the national title?
18 national titles you have now.
Have you been able to soak it in? Yep. Are you already thinking about next year? Yep. That's it.
As soon as the game ended.
As soon as the game ended, we're already watching tape for,
Flew out recruit.
That's right, exactly. Flying out. You probably can't fly right now, probably. But yeah, we'll see if old Nick wants to come on. I don't really want to have him on, but that's whatever. Listen, he can't. There's no denying he's an outstanding coach, and so as a coach myself, it's always, I think one of the things that, if you are a coach out there or you're an aspiring coach, I think it's always beneficial to look across sports at other coaches that have been successful, because in my opinion, coaching is across all sports is 80-90% the same. It's just the specifics of the sport and the requirements. It's just how you connect with people, how you communicate, your standards, how you get people to buy into a process and get people to do things they need to do. It's all pretty much the same except for the specific part of the actual sport.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot about working on things that you don't think about a lot, but are super important. Like especially in team sports like that. But it's probably amazing to sit in there and watch what they work on. You know what I mean? Like and how they drill that into each athlete so it becomes just an automatic reflex move. Those types of things, and I think that's always an interesting perspective when you kind of apply it to triathlon and swimming and cycling, just the ability to not have to think. I think they spend a lot of time on that, and athletes are probably like, ugh, it's so boring. Mm-hmm. But they just don't let up. I mean, look at what they do. I mean, and he always brings in coaches, right, that are like failed or, shunned, and they come in and of course they buy in and they see it for a year, but I think they walk away and they may know a lot of that, but they still can't, they don't have, you talk about discipline, that's coaching discipline, right? And how it's easy to know the secrets, but to stick with them and be, steadfast on your approach and not give in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that's coaching in general across all sports. That's why it's so interesting when you hear, no matter what the sport is, athletes talk about, coaches and what their specific athletic resume is and how fast were you, at the setting, like any of it matters. It's all about how you can communicate and how you can get other people to do their best, not what you did as your best. But yeah, he does it. He works. I can guarantee you he doesn't have all of his athletes scrolling through, football Twitch to find out the latest, greatest helmet for coming out the next year that's going to save them, 0.0001 seconds in their 40-yard dash. No, he's working on fundamentals and being consistent and showing up every day. But that's the last I'm going to say about Nick Saban, Alabama, because I'm a struggling Tennessee fan. That's about all I can stomach. And if you're still with us and you stomached the beginning of this podcast, we appreciate it. But yeah, we like we said, go back, listen to our archives. We have 442 of them. Mike does an awesome job of outlining those, and you can obviously go through an order. You can pick and choose whatever you like, but our main goal is to leave you with some thoughts, honestly, just of what we're both thinking through today. We'll go back and finish up a Q&A we did. If you're on Facebook, you can hop on our group, which is Crushing Iron Group, answer a simple question, we'll let you in there. And if we're not driving the conversation on our own and we're using the athletes that we work with across the globe, we will sometimes pop in there like we did a few weeks ago, and we will try to finish this up today where we let the members in that group post questions, and we will do our best to answer all of those. in order and get to as many as we can. So we'll do that today. But that's our agenda. We have no sponsors, we have no ads, but we have one purpose, and that is to hopefully allow you to have a happy and healthy life in your endurance sports journey.
I could feel
You could feel it?
Yeah, I could feel your searching for something there. No, that was good.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, so what else?
Get rolling. You can start with Jeff.
Do you really want to roll right now?
I mean, if you want to, I know we're only 7 minutes in, and I would imagine most people are already like, okay, I've had enough. Can they please like get on with their life and like talk about, triathlon?
Okay.
Triathloning and Ironman.
We're going to talk about triathlon right now. The first question comes from Jeff Dunn.
Jeff. I love Jeff. Jeff's a good guy. We've been working together for like 3 years.
It's a fun question.
It is a fun question. Go ahead.
All right. So 2 buddies who are consistently neck to neck with each other in races, athletic ability, are training for the same race weekend. They have raced several times together in the past and have finished within minutes of each other. Athlete A signed up for the 70.3 distance. Athlete B signed up for the 140.6 distance. They both nailed the training plan Coach Robbie and Mike put together for them. On race weekend, the event runs into permitting issues and cancels the longer distance, so it's now a 70.3 race for everyone. They decide to start the race swim together. They both have great races and no issues. Who wins and why? I think, yeah, I know it's one of those, like, it's like why, but like it's an interesting thing to ponder. And I think that's at the gist of it is basically,
the 70.3 athlete will win.
Yeah.
Listen, this is like, we love doing these because they're thought provoking and we love putting these kind of things out for our listeners to do because everyone has questions, and that's one of my favorite things we do about this podcast. We try to answer all of them, not just a lot of podcasts are geared towards the elite level, high performing, all in all day every day, which is fine. But a lot of athletes are just getting started and they have a ton of questions and you might not feel comfortable answering. So always feel free to ask and we'll do our best to answer them. But for the most part, all questions are also going to start with, well, it depends. It depends on how they execute the plan perfectly, but it also depends on what kind of horses you're having for the courses. We always talk about athletes that are made for specific courses. They do better. I would generally say it's probably the 70.3 athlete because they're probably going to be sharper and a little bit quicker, because that's exactly what they've been training for versus, the long distance athlete might be, in better overall fitness shape, but they're probably not going to be as sharp and fast coming out of the gate. They might not be able to push the higher power for longer.
Yeah, they're going to run out of real estate.
They might. That's exactly right. They'll run out of real estate. If it was, now I think the question would be, probably a more appropriate question is if it was a middle distance. So if it was somewhere between a 70.3 and a full, like way back in the day, there was a triathlon company that used to be called Tri 101. Which was like a hybrid between, I actually did one of the races in Bradenton, Florida. This was 11 years ago. It was a 1.8 mile swim, an 80 mile bike, and an 18 mile run. So it was a very solid tweener. And so I actually think that the distance is fantastic. A lot of people didn't want to do it because it's not an official name, but I actually think the distance was fairly exciting. I did the race. I think that would probably be a better question. Who would win between going up a little bit when the Ironman athlete would be having race faster? I still tend to think the 70.3 athlete would probably take that one as well. But it would come down to the run, as always, like in how in pacing and how you do it perfectly. I would just generally think if you're doing the 70.3, as Jeff asked, I think the 70.3 distance trained athlete would probably take the day. And like you said, they just run out of real estate because they would probably hit that one speed as a lot of long distance athletes have. And they're just like, I can hold this forever, right? But they might not have that next gear to kick it up a notch, to up their power by 10 or 15 watts on the bike, or go 10 or 15 seconds faster on their own. So I'd probably give this to the 70.3 athlete.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like who gets in each other's head the most before the swim starts.
Yeah, exactly.
Intimidate.
They both have great races and no
guy,
issues. Yeah, always go back to nutrition. How were they on their nutrition? Did they nail it? Did they not nail it? But yeah, fun question. But I'd put my money behind the 70.3 athlete.
All right, we can just ponder that.
Yeah, keep pondering.
Are you lined up now to read one?
Yeah, I am. It's from Serena Bell. I love the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome for adding me. This question has been stressing me. Well, I apologize for us not getting it to 4 weeks later. What is the best approach to train for the swim without swimming? ? As of right now, earliest I will be able to get in the water is in May, but only tethered swimming, and lakes here don't warm up enough for open water until June or July. My first 70.3 is in June, deferred from 2020. I am SOL. Backstory, when the pandemic started, I moved all my training to home. I have a high-risk family members and won't take any risks going to the gym. I've been doing strength training, rowing, and old school rower breathing exercises. Then you're already on the right track. That is exactly the answer that I would give. I am not a huge fan of tethered swimming. I think it promotes really poor body positioning and not the correct stroke mechanics. I would say do what you're doing. And rowing is the closest thing that I have found in my experience that replicates the muscle groups you will use when swimming, especially if you're rowing the right way, and you're really trying to engage your lats when you're doing the big pull. I would do that. Then obviously, as soon as you can get in the lake, then go to the lake. But I would not honestly not waste your time. But I would do more rowing and just focus more on your bike and your run than honestly doing tethered swims. Like, here's my thing about the tethered swims.
Okay.
And I'm going to try not to be ranty as I accused you of blatantly on the Mondays podcast, is that if you look back at 2020 and how many athletes were like, you know what, I'm going to still do my thing 3 times a week, because races are going to happen soon. I got to stay in my swim shape, and I'm going to do, 2 or 3, swim cords a week. And I'm going to do some tethered things. And I'm like, how's that going for you? Because we still haven't raced yet. What you could have been doing is biked maybe 2 or 3 more times a week and ran maybe 2 or 3 times a week and use that instead, because you're going to use that, and those take longer, in my opinion, to develop. So how's that going for you? I would be doing more cycling and more running right now. If the non-swimming part is an issue, I wouldn't waste your time doing tethered things or cords like everyone was trying to do last March or April, because you could have used all that. Frankly, it's all the time you did that was wasted, unless you're back to swimming now. But it was all wasted. You could have been running or biking or doing something else. In my opinion, it'd be a little more productive. And this is coming from one of the biggest swim guys you're ever going to talk to in terms of how important the swim is in triathlon, but also a huge fan of using your time wisely and looking at your overall development as an athlete. Use your time wisely, bike more, definitely run more, but don't waste your time, wrapping your, swim cords around a tree in the backyard and doing, fake strokes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's exactly what I thought you would say. And I know you're not a big yoga guy, but like for me, we've talked about this before. A lot of times you look at triathletes versus swimmers, and you always talk about flexibility or just that ability to, whether it's straightening your toes or your shoulder flexibility and all those kinds of things. I think those are worthwhile. I do believe that just the ability to have more range of motion in the swim is like huge. That'll benefit. It may not be a direct, application to your stroke necessarily, but it'll give you more just general power and ability to be flexible like that. So, I mean, I agree with you on the rowing, and I mean, anything really that activates the core and lats, I think is always a good thing to put in substitute, especially the core. I mean, we talk about the lats obviously, but like if you have a strong core, I think that's just going to really help your swim.
And huge in body positioning, help you on the bike too, especially if you have a TT bike or an aero bike. Yeah, it's all around. It's a
you got time, work the core.
It's a bonus. Work the core, leave the bands at home.
Yeah.
Make a slingshot out of them. Next up is Debbie Hall. Outstanding question. How does everyone fit in the 6 run sessions, Don't Suck at Running podcast, 4 swim sessions, Don't Suck at Swimming podcast, 2 gym, 2 yoga, cycling, and meditation, and still go to work? I haven't finished listening to all the rest of the podcasts. Great question.
It's called Don't Suck at Training.
Have
you heard that one?
That could be a Don't Suck at Training. No, it's an outstanding question.
Time management.
And honestly, that's like my big, I don't know. I'm not a poo-poo on the gym kind of guy, but I'm like, if you're going to prioritize your running and biking and swimming. I know that other people love to lift, they love to do things, but if you're trying to be the best triathlete possible, then but it is all about time management. But if you look at it and you say, 6 runs and 4 swims, a lot of people don't have time, to go to the gym and make 4 swims, because swimming is the hardest one, I think, to improve on, especially for triathletes who may or may not know how to swim effectively and efficiently and do the right things in the water. They just kind of go there and noodle around. Well, if I tell you to go do a 1-hour swim, then you have to tack on at least another hour of drive time and changing. So you're a 4 hour. We covered this on I think my last week's Zoom call, an athlete asked about, I want to get better at swimming. You always say, you got to run and bike more than you don't. Then how does that work with swimming? And honestly, if you want to get a whole lot better, it usually is 4 to 5 times a week. But you also, again, like going back to the question that Serena asked, like it's also about like where we are right now and what you need to work on and what is the actual best use of your time, and where you can make the biggest gains with the appropriate use of time. And while 4 or 5 swims is definitely going to make you better, and that might make, Joe Blow down the street better because he has, a totally flexible job and no kids and his pool is 2 minutes away. Well, if you're an athlete whose pool is 20 minutes away, then every single time you swim, you're taking an extra hour. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And a 1 minute swim is also a minute, not wasted, but a minute you have to use to get to that swim. And so if you do 4 swims a week, that's 4 hours that you're just commuting and going back and forth and not, it's just it's the hardest to get the best ROI from swimming. That's why I see a lot of people focusing on swimming and running. But I've also said, run 6 times a week. It's also about, how long are those runs? Because I could technically run 20 times this week if they were all 20 minutes, but if there's 6 runs, like how are they divided up? When are they divided up? How are you structuring them on the same days as you might be doing cycling? So I think it's all about structure. And the ultimate thing is like what do you need to prioritize for yourself to get better? Are you weaker at one thing? Are you better at one thing? Because if you're a great swimmer, then no, you don't have to do, hopefully you don't, and you shouldn't, you don't suck at all of them, right? You don't suck at triathlon. There are things, if you want to triage, how do I need to get better? Swimming, cycling, and running, what am I best at? Order those out, and then also look at your race schedule. If you're a terrible swimmer and you are doing something like Ironman Wisconsin or Lake Placid or some of these harder swims, then yeah, you best get addressing them because you don't have there are no gifts, right? But if you're doing a race like Augusta 70.3 or Chattanooga 70.3, then you're like, okay, it's not my greatest, but what I do need to do is make sure that I can focus on the other 2, which are going to take up the most amount of time. I don't get any freebies. I don't get any free passes. Like at Chattanooga, no matter what it is, 70.3 or full, you're going to get a free shot downstream. So do I need to take those 2 extra swim visits a week? That's an extra 4 hours because it's 2 hours in the pool and 2 hours probably drive time and commute. No, I'm probably better off using those 2 hours from running, or cycling. So you have to triage those and also look at the course that you have and then just what fits in your life best. No, it's not I don't have any athlete, really it does all of those like you mentioned. It's in blocks. Like you might do a run focus block, a cycling, focus block, a swim block. But the thing is you have to at some point, and this is I think another thing that athletes tend to forget or when they get really excited about these specific training blocks, that if you can't at least maintain some semblance of the block you just did, then you're probably going to kind of peter your way back to where you were before you started, right? You have this that's like, I'm gonna do a huge bike block, and they do like 5 or 6 rides a week, and then they only do it for like 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then which isn't really that much to be honest with you, and then 2 weeks later they're back to 2 or 3 times a week. And like, well, eventually your bike, like you have to be able to hold it. That's where your bike fitness can kind of not go backwards, but if you can't hold it or do things to keep it the way it is, then you're probably going to lose. So you have to be very careful. It is a huge puzzle piece and kind of just mixing and matching how your life and how your training schedule and where your strengths and weaknesses go, and then putting those blocks together and making sure the cycles connect. That way you hopefully, wake up on race day being the best you can be.
Yeah. The one thing, like you talked about the gym, right? Like I always just think about that. It's like, I feel like a lot of people want to put that in its own bucket in Training Peaks and make it like an official, hour-long strength training session. But like for me, and I think most triathletes, we put some of these workouts in, they're basically body weight exercises, and people do them, and they if they go too hard or whatever, they get sore. I mean, like it works them out, right? Like so. My thought on that always is like, if I feel like I have for me, like kind of I feel like my glutes are weak right now, so like. That basically just translates into me like seriously like lunging while I'm making dinner. You know what I mean? Like just doing things around the house or like playing with your kids and you just kind of work on your triceps or things like that. I think that to me the supplemental work like that sometimes can just be kind of unofficial, for lack of a better word, and just kind of part of your day rather than, like if you watch a movie. I mean, there's plenty of things you can do when you're watching a movie. Rather than having to drive to a gym and just actually sit down at machines or whatever to make it seem like it's legit. That's my piece on that.
I was a little ranty.
Well, yeah, I guess so. And then these 6 runs, 15-minute run. I mean, 15 minutes, you can find it,
That's the thing. That's why, and we've done this before, is like when athletes like, what's the point doing a 20-minute? If you can't find time for the 20, then I'm not giving you the 30. Yeah. Right. And it's just about working your way up incrementally from 20 to 30, because that's also a piece of it. If it's like, all right, hey, Mike, next week, we need to find 10 more hours of time we can work together. You're gonna be like, well, crap, like how that's a lot of time. Like, how do I do this? But if I was like, hey, next week we need to find 30 more minutes to figure. Sure, done. Then after that, we're like, you think we can squeeze in, an additional 15 minutes next week? Yeah, probably. Because you learn how to, because I think the thing that athletes struggle with is that when we say, fit these hours into your life, we always kind of just condense and have to do it all at once. And the volume you want to end up seeing is the volume that you've earned and can find your way. But once you find like 15 minutes here, you can probably find 20. Because you get good at it. And because the 15-minute runs become part of your life, and they're not like vacant, you're not starting from zero anymore. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying, all right, I want you to, go find, I need you to do 2 60-minute runs this week. And you're like, I don't have time for that. But if I said, I want you to do 3 30-minute runs extra this week, you're like, I could do that for sure. It's only a 30-minute difference total, but it's 3 more runs, but you can find these chunks, here and there better because they seem smaller. That's what you do with running and any other thing. It's like you find ways and then you slowly mold your life to look that way because you've done it incrementally and in a way that seems attainable, that you can actually digest. It doesn't seem so overwhelming. And you're like, I was expecting more volume. Like, well, let's make sure you can fit in the 12, because once the 12 seems like this is just what I do, like this is my normal life, then 13 and 14, that doesn't make that much of a difference. And then once the 13, 14 becomes part of like your daily routine, then you're like, what's 15 to 16? Because you've adjusted your life the way that it needs to look to make the 12 or 13 or 14 your normal schedule. You're either going to bed early, you're getting up early, or whatever it is, but still getting the amount of sleep you need to. But so then you just have to start picking and choosing where kind of your max is. And you don't want to hit the max. You kind of always be, in my opinion, like an hour and a half, 2 hours below it, because you want to leave room for that stress. But you have to be very in tune with that and just do it incrementally and not just, finding, going from 8 to 15 hours just because you think you have more time and you think that you can.
There's Chris.
I know, sorry, our builder. He came in the other day. I think we mentioned him previously, and he's like, yeah, man, I just was listening to a podcast again, and Mike was talking about something else, and it sounded like he was struggling a little bit today. And it's like, man, he's like taking shots at you for coming out of the gate soft the other day. I was like, I think that's actually the podcast we talked about you. And he's like, oh, which one was it? I was like, oh, I think you're famous now. You have a podcast.
We'll see if he really listens.
Yeah, 2 mediocre podcasts. We'll see if he does.
All right, next question is from Aaron. It's for me specifically, evidently. Knowing the point of your life you started racing Ironman, do you ever wish that you started sooner? If so, how?
This is an outstanding question.
I think about that a little. I think my answer to that really might be no. Because one of the things I think about was I think I saved a lot in my body by starting later. So
you're like the second string running back in college. It's now the all-pro in NFL.
100%. Yeah,
they save the carries.
Yeah, that backup quarterback that never played, and then all of a sudden they've got a longer life. In a way, that's kind of how I've tried to think, because I know that a lot of people that around my age group that have been doing it their whole life. They're really, although I should talk because now I'm starting to have injuries and things like that, but. So I think, I have thought about it. Really what I think about is not regarding Ironman, but I wish on some level, because I was a pretty active cyclist when I was younger, and I wish that I had been more active swimmer, when I was younger. So it would be settled into my routine, and it would be something that wouldn't be so difficult for me to pick up later in life. Running was a part of my life, even though it wasn't endurance, but I think having swimming in your back pocket is from your youth, and that's how I think about it, really. Not as far as being a competitive swimmer, but somebody that actually swam a lot when they were young, and then I would still have it, just naturally, I guess. That is like, and I think I said this before on another podcast, is like, if I didn't grow up swimming year round, I probably wouldn't be a triathlete. That's very interesting. Just because I do believe that, and it's also a reason why I love coaching swimming as much, because it is such a hard sport to pick up later on in life. It's kind of like picking up a foreign language, learning when you're in third grade versus learning when you're 30. Yeah. You're going to pick it up a lot easier. It's just that swimming is so technical that it is so much harder in life, and that's why I have so much admiration and just appreciate how hard people work at it at such late in life, because I don't frankly know that I would have that. It's something that's so technical. It is. I think it's one of those things that you're obviously
they say like once a swimmer, always a swimmer. You just have it, but it's not just like, it's like riding, it's like just like riding a bike. We all have that too, but not everyone has a swim part of it. So it's interesting to hear that our time is always our time. It's always tend to be right on time if you look back at things. But I do agree with you when you look back to like, you've only got so many bullets in you, in terms of like how many matches to burn for your life. You're not just like, per year. So,
And I will reiterate the fact that I still think my fastest is in me. I'm going to just throw that out there, Phil.
And he said it's coming in September. Corey Anthony, coming from a weightlifting and powerlifting background, what would be the best way for athletes that carry more muscle to train, aka building your lactate threshold? The same way the rest of us train. And that was I would work and that's one of the harder things, I think, also, again, that people may or may not misunderstand about training in terms of, people who love to weightlift and don't weightlift, is there's always this happy medium of like the more muscle you build, the more that's required, right? The more it's required to move and have that muscle operate. It's going to take more blood. It's going to take more oxygen because those muscles are bigger. That's like, that's the analogy and the description kind of breakdown I give to people who, who are swimming and just kicking a ton. I'm like, you're exhausted and you're not going anywhere because you're kicking your legs so hard, and your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, those muscles are significantly larger than your arms, right? And so that's what's taking up so much oxygen and blood. That's why you're so out of breath and going nowhere. Also because your kick is probably super inefficient, but because those require so much extra. So if you build more muscle, it's also going to require more. So if you're a person who's come from like, a bodybuilding, lifting, powerlifting background, like, still you train like the rest of us. You do a lot of zone 1, zone 2 work, and then when it's time, you hit it hard. Like, that's the same thing, but it will probably help you. I would not worry about your quote unquote lactate threshold. I would just get to work on the endurance part of it, and learn how to carry your body. And you'll probably, if you're okay with it, you're probably going to lose a little bit of that muscle mass. And it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're getting weaker. It's your body becoming more efficient, right? It's like you don't ever see the greatest marathoners in the world looking like the 400-meter guys. They look totally opposite, because it's about how much weight you have to carry over a longer distance, not how you're going to power through doing a 200 or 400. Like, those guys look like freaking bodybuilders. They're ripped. Then you look at the guys that, are running, even a half marathon or a full, and it's a totally different body type, because it's all about, it's just like cycling. It's like climbing as well. It's all about watts per kilogram or power per, how light can you be, but still powerful to carry yourself over a longer distance, because that's where efficiency comes from.
Mm-hmm. Now, my guess would be, thinking about a power lifter getting a triathlon, that they would be a really strong biker and probably struggle in the water and maybe on the run as well. So like, that's just my sense, is like they'd probably be able to throw some pretty big watts and be.
You might
powerful.
not be, unless you're giant, you probably throw down the watts, but you're probably not going to be super
right. Yeah,
because you've got shoulders like a refrigerator.
Yeah. So I would slow transition and just build that engine, or build that, because you got the foundation. I mean, it's like a weird transition, right? It's almost like I don't know what that would be.
What's that? Yeah, nice one.
I thought.
Robert Poma, I understand run frequency is important this time of year. It's important every time of year. But what do you do if your biking is also a limiter? Is there an approach to address both now? Next big race is Ironman Chattanooga 70.3, which is in May. Thank you to both for all that you do. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope you both have a fantastic 21. Well, same to you, Rob.
Outstanding.
No, I kind of went back and addressed this in Debbie's question. If you're doing Chattanooga 70.3, like right now, I would, if you're used to swimming 3 times a week, I'd probably, it's like makes me uncomfortable to even say, I'd probably cut it down to like 1 or max 2 and go and bike 4 times a week, and then keep you running 5 or 6. Like, because listen, the Chattanooga swim is a point to point. They even like took out like the 200-meter upstream they used to have, and now it's just straight downstream. So
a little bit longer.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still going to be a piece of cake. So,
piece of cake.
Right now, as you get closer to race day, I would still bump it up to 3. But if you're like yourself, Rob, I would probably just hit up, maybe do 4 rides a week right now, and then maybe go back to 5 runs a week if you're doing 6 and you don't have the time, and just get 1 to keep the feel for the water. And then once you get like 4 to 8 weeks out from race day, then kick the runs back up, or kick the swims back up to like 4 to 8. You might not get a huge fitness boost, but you'll get a better feel for the water, and you'll get kind of a little fitness top off.
Yeah, I can buy into that, man. Can you? Yeah. I I love how you said that, though. It's like, it hurts you to say it. And it is. It's like, you got to look at that particular race, I guess. But you can't deny the bike,
No matter how much you run, like if you
can't
no matter
deny
how much you run,
anything,
if you
really,
come
but
off the
man.
bike shelled, then yeah, you don't want to be the same. Like you don't want to be shelled after the swim. That's kind of what I was mentioning. Going back to again, I think the question above about how do you fit it all in is like you got to go in phases, right? And so if you're right now, like this is the time to like pull swimming back, and make that but some athletes I have them if it's a limiter, then I have them swim a ton and then I remove a swim, right? So I get them in the best swim fitness shape they can possibly get in, and then when they enter a last block like a Chattanooga or an Augusta or whatever that's a downstream use swim, then I actually pull a swim back and add in extra running and cycling because we've already hit our top for swim. We're probably going to get that much faster because we're overall so fatigued and the swim is going to be easier. We've already hit our top fitness. So, but I have a little more time to add in some more rides or to add in some more runs to make top off what is going to take up the majority of the day. So it's the same thing as always. It's all about manipulating your schedule and adding, more things here, taking things away, but then making sure at the very end of the day, they all come together for your best race. And that is sometimes the hardest part I think about, coaching yourself or using a training plan is that it's not geared to you. It's just not. It's just a standard, generic, whatever. You have to be able to fluctuate things based on your strengths and weaknesses, based on the race, the time of year, based on the terrain, based on, what you're able to do certain times a year. And so I think that's, especially now when like pools are closed or closing on and off and people are restricted, like we had a question above, it's like, you have to just have like the sky view of the situation in the year and not just think about and I think again, like that goes back to things we've discussed before in the last few weeks is you need to hopefully this last year has taught us a lot in terms of you have to quit just thinking about your next race and you have to start thinking about your overall development as an athlete and where you want to be, not just in 5 months, but in the next 5 years and what's going to make you the best in 5 years. Not, I got to keep, I might have a race in 5 months but I can't swim. So I'm going to spend 2 hours this week, doing, swim courts. No, go bike and run. Like you need to start thinking about what's going to be the best for you long-term and over the course of your, entire endurance, hobbyist career. It's always good to have more eyes on it, but same thing, manipulate your training, make sure you do, things right when they need to be done right. And then pull back when it's actually okay to pull back.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, Chattanooga, if you feel comfortable, if you've done swims of this nature, or at least this, if you've done halves or whatever, and you can get in the water and you're at a point where you feel like you can cruise for 2,000, that's where you need to be. Right. So I agree with that 100%. I mean, like if you're training for a different race, like something in Wisconsin or something like, I approach that totally different with my swim. I mean, I like really have to go after it to be ready for stuff like that. But, it's not ignoring the swim totally, but it's like just being in good shape and then being in swim mentality for that day too.
And it's all about when you want to be where. Like if you were looking at like, like when I was training for Texas 70.3 that I was hoping was going to happen, I didn't get in the water till like 2 weeks out, but I biked like 5 or 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. And my thought was, where do I want to be 3 months after Texas 70.3? In pretty good shape for that, or having my cycling picked up significantly 3 months after that versus the 2 or 3 I would have had to drop each week, which is, 10 to 12 a month over 3 or 4 months. Where am I going to be and when do I want to be there? And sometimes it's hard for athletes, I think, to kind of wrap their brain around because they always want to be at their best all the time for every race. And I get that. And that's the point. But that's also comes down to like when you structure and periodization and what kind of cycle you want to be in to lead up to your biggest race, but not just your biggest race, but then over the course of the year and then the next year and then the next year.
Yeah. How are you going to get out of the water feeling fresh and not beat up?
Always fresh. So fresh and so clean. Mm-hmm. I think we actually covered William Butler's. The previous one, we'll hop on to Rich Tony. I love that name. Rich Tony. It sounds like a country band. Rich Tony.
He's got some sweet...
No, it's a dog in his profile.
Accents.
Accent, which he may or may not have. Does the running phenomenon of junk miles really exist? No. Move on. If so, what is and how and when we should avoid it? Most people 90% of triathletes that I have ever come across in my entire life don't run nearly as much because they just don't think they need to, but you really cannot run enough. Like, you don't want to overrun versus on what you're training, but you should run more often. Zone 1, zone 2, go out and run more with your wife or your husband or your kids. Time is time, especially on your feet, especially when you're trying to build, the chassis and being endurable. No, I would argue that there is seriously no such thing as junk miles on the run, unless they're poorly structured junk miles. Then they're more than junk. They're just trash.
My first thought was run camp and how you handle that. We always run a ton over 3 days, and there's a lot of walking and hiking, and it's that sort of active recovery piece. And I think that's kind of how you got to look at zone 1 stuff, whether it's like you said, running with your kids or whatever. It's not beating you up. It's just making you stronger usually.
There are no junk miles.
Okay.
Rich Tony. Denise, liquid nutrition on the bike over solid. What are your views? I have trouble with keeping anything down on the run. This is a big fat depends. This is very particular to each individual. I am a huge proponent of, for myself, I take in for a 70.3, I don't take in anything but like 6 total Cliff blocks for the whole entire thing. Everything else I take in is nutrition. If you're doing a full, I take in more actual food. It's very, very, very specific, and also specific to what kind of nutrition, what kind of fueling you actually use. But yeah, this is one of those things where I would highly recommend meeting with somebody, testing out a few products, getting an actual like dialed in nutrition plan that's specifically just for you, before you just assume, I want to go all liquid. That might not be the best idea. Yes, is it easier to digest? Sure. But I would feel like it's been like when I do a full Ironman, after about 6-7 hours from the start of the swim to towards the end of the bike, I'm like, I want to eat something. I need to chew on some food. Plus, it's so hard to take in any calories on the run because you're trying to keep speed and you're running and you have that sloshing in your stomach, and it's just obviously harder to eat than it is while you're on the run than it is while you're biking. And so I think you want to obviously overload quite a bit on the bike, not overload, but appropriately load. So to make up for the fact that, you're going to be running and not taking in as much calories and much nutrition, but you're also going to be exerting more energy while you're on the new bike. So it's very specific to you. But I think most people would tell you that you need to train your gut no matter what to take in as many calories as possible on the bike, because the best you can do for that is you're going to be set up for success. Like recently, Gustav Eden, who won the Daytona 70.3, I think he did like a little race report. I think he took in like 120 carbs an hour, which is insane to me, which is totally contradictory based on, because there used to be science that was like, oh, you can only absorb like 60 to 80. We always hear those but now it's coming out that you can actually absorb more than that. And I remember also reading like Cody Beals when he won Ironman Chattanooga maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think he took in like 475 calories an hour on the bike. And he's a guy that probably weighs like 130 or 120. So it's all about training. I think he took in all liquid nutrition as well. I think it was like a mixture of like Red Bull and maltodextrin and it's like all kinds of like funky things. But he just trained his gut to take in as much as possible, which is also, I think, contradictory to a lot of athletes who, when they train, they're like, I want to take in as little as possible because I want to do this fasted, or I want to do this with just water. Like, you get extra points. No, you get extra points for performing your best, not for seeing who uses the least amount of fuel.
Yeah, I like that. Well, yeah, for me, I always try to eat solids on the bike. It's just good for my stomach. And I'm trying to think back. I rarely eat on the run, like in other than blocks or something like that. But I always end up eating cookies at the end of the full, or grapes or anything that's in my way.
Seriously.
But for the most part, like for a half, I think last time I did a half, I didn't eat anything. It was all just like scratch or something like that.
I got to eat something on the bike. Have to.
On the bike,
I can't eat anything except for maybe a Cliff Block on the run for an Ironman, but I have to eat something on the bike. Have to.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sure I don't take enough calories still on the bike. For sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't even argue it. I would just say that, yeah, you don't. Most people don't. Most people weigh under fuel.
I probably eat 3 Cliff Bars or something on top of everything. So, I mean.
Yeah, you don't. I can tell you. I've seen you. You don't.
I don't.
Matt Robertson. Tough one. What are each of your favorite podcasts and least favorites? Matt was in here. Matt was heading down from Nashville to Atlanta yesterday and popped in to say hello. And as we told you yesterday, Matt, next time just pack your bag, get a workout in while you're here.
Right?
Golly, this favorite podcast, least favorite.
I got to tell you, it's just been a weird time for podcasts lately for me. I'm trying to, like, I used to listen to a lot of comedian podcasts, and now comedians are getting into this weird.
Hey, dude, I think he's asking, like, the ones that we've done about ourselves.
Oh. Really?
Yeah, I mean, why would we listen to a least favorite podcast?
I don't know. All right, well, I won't give out my recommendation.
I mean, you can go ahead and give yours out, and I'll give mine out, because mine will be very short and simple.
Well, like, I was just going to say, like, comedians, they're all, like, everybody's getting so politically correct, and, like, there's always this tension around, like, the comedy is not even comedy anymore. So, but there is one that I found, and it's not always appropriate, but it's called Bad Friends, and they're just too. They just rip on each other the whole time, and it's super inappropriate. And it's just refreshing for me.
It's relaxing because no one's
Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino. They're 2 comedians, and they're just like, I mean, they basically throw each other situations, and then they run with it. You know, no matter how like off-putting it feels, and they just they just dive in. They're acting.
So they're an inappropriate version and more spectacular and fascinating than you and I.
Oh, yeah, they push the envelope a little bit more than us.
Yeah, we don't push any envelopes. We don't even have an envelope. I don't have a favorite one because I don't listen to any.
Okay, that's good.
I don't listen to a single. I don't even like listen to ours. When you put it on here and have your headset, I like have to leave the room. I don't even like listen to ours, which isn't a great marketing piece.
What was our favorite podcast?
Yeah, you've ever done.
That we've done? I mean, I think it's going to have to, for me, it was just, I really vibed on that 300th. That was fun.
Yeah, way to ruin. Take that one.
Did I steal yours?
I mean,
that was in front of a live audience, so it was kind of cool.
I don't really have.
Stick out.
I always
forget what we even say.
Yeah, I do too. I don't even think, yeah, I know, same here. Yeah, I generally rate ours like 6 to 10 on a scale. And I'm like, hey, when like I'm texting an athlete or whatever, like, I'm like, yeah, I just finished. Like, oh, how was it? I'm like, I don't know, 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10. But usually if I get off the air and I look at you and I'm like, that was a good one, then we immediately get like a 1-star review. But
exactly.
But if it's always the opposite, but if I'm like, man, that one sucked, then the next day we get like 7 emails that were like, that one really spoke to me. That was fantastic. We get like 7. So I should probably aim for them all to suck because they go great. I do think there was one, I don't remember which one it was, but it was about a year ago, maybe less, but that I do specifically remember being like, oh, you know what my least favorite podcast was? When you couldn't focus because you kept hearing the alarm guy out there fixing his sim. I felt like you left me on an island. You were getting up out of your chair. You were super irritable.
And I just give you, go ahead.
You're like, hey, just keep going talking. I was like, I don't have anything else to talk about. You're like getting up. He's walking out of our office, like shaking his head. And he's super flustered. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sit here with no one to throw it to and generally talk about nothing right now.
I think I came back after like 15 minutes and said, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, and I heard nothing you said.
Favorites, 300 was special, but yeah, there's
with Jessica.
They're
Wisconsin.
I have a couple, favorites. I think I just have to go back and.
One of my favorites actually was our first one. Do you remember in my office in Nashville? We sat down and we
talked about swimming.
It was a 20-minute podcast. I don't know if it's out there somewhere, but I don't know if it's in the main list. But it was about the pool buoys.
Yeah, I remember.
That was like our first one.
Yeah, I was like, "What? I don't even know."
We should go back and do
this?
Pool buoy meets Dogcast.
Yeah, we have a couple.
Dogcast. I had a good time.
Most of them all are in for needs improvement. Jody, how can I do a better job of activating my lats when I swim? I find my lats don't engage well, which is holding back my power. A lot of this is just strictly technique. A lot of people don't engage or activate their lats because they just frankly don't have the right form. Like we had 3 athletes in past weekend from Wisconsin, and that was like the main thing, or the main thing we were talking about. The specific athlete was really just getting your elbow pop to get that early vertical form. This specific athlete, they just moved their arm around like you would have seen a hand on a clock. They just moved around like 360. There was no vertical, there was no catch, there was no nothing. It was just going around, like a windmill, like a hand on a clock. And so we wanted to get it to where they could at least get a catch. And so we worked for a while on just popping their elbow out so they can get that feeling of where your elbow needs to be, so your forearm can follow underneath it. It's hard to explain this on air without showing it, like physically showing it. It's just difficult, but figuring out your elbow pop. And then I also think like one arm drills are great to kind of get the full range of motion in your stroke, which is what you want. But yeah, that's a difficult thing to I guess explain over the air.
Like you do this, stand against the wall facing it, and with your feet flat, and with one arm reach as high as you can, and just feel how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the feeling you want. I mean, that's sort of the thing too in the pool, right? Is just reach out and just, for me, it's like I just kind of think to my lats,
Or what I would also say is like stand, like, God, it's so hard to explain over the air. So, I would put your back against the wall, heels against the wall, raise your arms above your head, keep your heels planted, and now reach farther above you. Like, so that's how I was trying to explain it when we were working in this pool, when I was standing up on our steps and like showing them, is like, if I said, reach on top of the fridge and grab some cookies off, and you couldn't reach it, would you just stop? No, you would. But keeping your feet on the ground, you can extend like through your obliques and through your lats, like you can extend upwards to reach farther by moving but you also don't want to over rotate your shoulder forward, because then you lengthen things too much and you have you can't activate it because it's too stretched. That's a tough one.
That's the fine line right there.
Yeah,
right?
I don't want to
too far of a reach.
Because I will say people way overreach, They extend and they glide, and that's like why you don't, because then you can't restrict it. You can't do a catch because you've lengthened your muscle out so far. You can't restrict. That's why you don't see 200 or 400 meter athletes doing yoga before they go, because they don't want their muscles totally loose and flimsy and straight. They want to be ready to pop, ready to constrict. And so that's what you need with your lats too. Just don't overextend. Jeff, I'm in week 6 of how to not suck at running. Most of my easy pace runs to stay in zone 2 were like 13:30 pace. A year ago, before I took time off, I was training much harder, not in a specific zone, just focusing on my running frequency and building mileage for Boston. I was getting speed and was sitting at a projected 9:20 pace for a marathon. I do feel great with the adapting with the run plan and feeling fresh and ready for the next run, and also notice my prosthetic leg can return for the next run much easier. But my question is, when should I be seeing some better times just from the run frequency? I felt like last time I had to push to get my times down, which also made my easy recovery run sit at 12:45. I just feel slow right now. Is the trade-off for building run durability? Thanks for the show. You're more than welcome. I think one of the things that you kind of have to wrap your mind around is it's not about running slow, it's about running easy. And if you have, and what we talk about when we go through this in the podcast or when we work through athletes, is that you need to be run easy, not just purposely slow. Just run easy. But it's going to be slower than you're probably normally running. But if you're a guy who's been, as you said, running 15, a bunch of times a week for a long period of time, then you can add in more hard runs. But to add in 3 or 4 hard runs a week is counterproductive. I'm sure there's a formula out there for projected paces for marathons. But I see a lot of athletes that don't run a lot and have a projected, your Garmin spits out a number like, careless calculator, I can run this pace for a marathon. And like, well, if you haven't done the mileage and you haven't built it up, then no, you can't, because speed doesn't matter unless you can hold it for the duration of the thing. That's why you see people. That's why I kind of joke with some people sometimes that hit up the track Tuesday every single week, and I'm like, but if you're only running 15 times a week, 15 miles a week, then what are you really topping off? It's because it's not. You're not going to have the endurance and the durability to hold that fast track workout benefit the last 2 miles of your marathon. It's just 0 point to it. If you can't build yourself up to a certain amount of mileage, then you don't have a cake to ice. And that, I guess that's my thing, but if you already have a cake to ice, then get to ice again. But most people don't have the cake to ice. They're just looking for get up to 25, 30, 35, 40 miles a week and then start putting some icing on, then start doing some tempo and some hill work. But if you're already there, then yeah, absolutely start adding in some tempo and some hill work when it's time.
And here's my thing that I like to say about this concept of running slow, quote unquote. And you said it. It's running easy. And here's what I fear a lot of people interpret that running slow idea or running easy idea as is being almost lazy. So like for me, like if you're out there running easy and slow and you're really back on your like leaning back and, pulling back, I don't see any reason why you can't run slow, but really think about how you're running and run with good form, because to me, that's like, it just builds a good habit. It ingrains that right posture and that little bit of lean. I've been thinking about that a lot on the treadmills. I'm going super slow and it feels great and breathe through my nose the whole 9 yards, but I'm really trying to think about, turnover and pickup but super under control, but still doing the right stuff. I mean, same with swimming. If you go slow, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean you
want to be lazy, right?
Nasty swimmer. It's just get good form and just slow it down. I mean, work that form. I mean, I think that's a really important piece to me is like, because when you're running up a hill or you're running faster, not all out, but usually your form like starts crystallizing a little bit more. So think about how to do that while you're running easy.
It's about being faster. What was his Andrew Sem? What's your view on periodization? I'm putting together an Ironman plan and we'll use the same prep-based build peak taper structure, which has worked in the past. I'm thinking of adjusting it slightly when the weekly hours near their max to something less taxing than 3 weeks on and 1 week off. I'm adjusting the side of 50 and I found that I might have set the bar too much in my hardest. Maybe I set a bit off more than you could chew in the hardest block last time around. Yes, everyone periodizes like their training. There's just like the phrase called reverse periodization. Like everything is periodized. Like it's just, do you prescribe to the thought of like the prep, the base, the build, the peak? Generally speaking, yes, I do. Because I do think it's, for most athletes, the best way to get the best out of their bodies. However, that's really only for people who are in a specific category of like a regular 9-to-5 job and a regular schedule and a regular life with very few interruptions and not much travel. Then yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I work with a lot of people who just frankly don't even have anywhere close to that. They work night shifts here, they work day shifts here, they work 4 days on, they work 4 days off. They are traveling 3 or 4 days a week, and I found that it is utterly useless to try and pin yourself into that whole. I also think that the 3 weeks on, 1 week off thing works. However, I don't think it works all the time for everyone. It depends on how much you get done. Like, what are you asking? If you're taking it early, you're doing a bunch of volume, do you need some time off in the big part of the year? Probably. Do you need some time off right now? Maybe not. But I have some athletes who do really, really, really well on like a 10-day cycle. Like they'll do 10 days. They'll do like Monday through the next Thursday, fairly hard, and then they'll take like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just like very, 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 very easy. They do really good on like small like 10-day blocks, which I think is also easier to wrap their brain around. But they also have schedules that make that very possible. They can do hard work and longer hours on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. If I made someone's easy days Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they'd be like, I got all day. What am I doing? It's not good use of your time. So it's very specific to you. But it's also about, what are your goals? When are you trying to race? When are you not trying to race? What do you want to be in the best shape for and what race it is? I think taper structure is something you could probably fluctuate with, that's the other thing is like everyone has their different version of what peak looks like. Some people think like their peak phase should last like 10 weeks. Well, no, that's like, I can't imagine a peak phase lasting that long. Some people think a build phase lasts for, 20 weeks. So everyone has their different definition of it. Do I think I think people look at it as like, planning more instead of periodization, and then executing and then looking back and thinking, hey, did this work? Yeah. Did it work the best? I don't know. Maybe tinker with it, maybe see what might work the best. Cause a lot of athletes think, well, I think I've been doing pretty good, with what I've got. And that might just be pretty good based on your expectations or what you thought. It might not even be anywhere close to what's actually the best. And so I think you have to be willing to tinker through that, tinker your way through that and just kind of play around. But do I think the general outline for most people can work effectively? I do. But I also think you should be willing to kind of, manipulate and play around a little bit.
Do you find, do people like, are pros, like, have they been experimenting? We talked about this many times. but like a shorter taper and things like that.
Yeah, well, it's also like, what's your definition of taper? And like most athletes, like I think if most age groupers looked at like the Strava or the training peaks of like a pro athlete, they'd be like, why are you working so hard the day before your race? You know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing like, because it's all about the level of shape that you're in,
right,
and the distance that you're going and how fast they're going. Like they're probably doing some pretty good efforts, you know, on the bike, the race week. They want to stay sharp. They want to stay regular. They want to stay primed. Most athletes look at taper as resting and being lazy, not getting sharp and staying crisp. And I think that's just a general mindset you need to have. Is it's, you know, tapering isn't about being lazy and resting and putting on 15 pounds. It's about being sharp and staying crisp and being as fresh as possible. It's not about being lazy and being soft.
All right.
Connie, you nailed it. I think you're going to need more than one podcast, and you were right. We would need more than 1 month, to be honest with you, because we came back to this today after being, I think, which is like 3 weeks ago. But yeah, we always appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed today. I always enjoy our Q&A podcast. This is going to be my least favorite and my favorite for the next week until we do another one. I always have things that I love about our podcast and things that I hate about every podcast that we do.
We have a meeting after every podcast.
We do a strict performance review.
Don't ever say that again.
Yeah, don't ever say that again. And we cannot broach that subject. Don't ever let me hear you say that, you know, FTP is not gold. But no, as always, we love you. We appreciate you. We'll come back to you live again next Monday. Hope you have a great weekend. If you need anything and want to see everything, you can hop on our website. It's c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. And you can also click on our coaching tab to check out our club membership, which is still ongoing. Mike's heading that up. We will plan your year. We'll take care of business. And you can click down that's the options, $349 for the year. If you have any questions about that or anything else, reach out to Mike. He is at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions from me specifically, you can always find me at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy.
See you Monday.
See you.